But eventually, if they do, we're going to have to. There'll be a talk that, all right, we're not counting week 14. Week 14 is a bye for everybody, right? In fantasy land, because we can't have week 1 of the playoffs be like this. All right, we can't have this final week of the regular season deciding who gets into the playoffs. I guess that's a little fairer because once again, everyone had a bye. So you're just your team just came in week 14, but it definitely throws a lot more thinking. And if you were thinking ahead, you could have screwed over your opponent, start claiming players in week 12 that because you had a dead spot on your roster and you knew they were going to have to claim somebody. So it's not it's not fun. That's for sure. Maybe you got lucky and you're good this week. In some leagues I am, some leagues I'm not, but it's not a fun week.
No, Jonathan Taylor is off. Javonte Williams is off. Ramondre Stevenson is off. Brian Robinson, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, all on buys. Almost impossible to find 2 running backs that are starting in the NFL. And to make matters worse, Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason both placed on injured reserve. They are both out this week. Isaac Guerrero is the starting running back of the 49ers. And I thought I saw Tim Biakabatuka came out of retirement to start for San Francisco, but it's some other guy. I don't even know what his name is. Deontay Johnson, you're not starting him in fantasy, but he was suspended for conduct detrimental to the team. Not going to see him anymore. And also Trevor Lawrence placed on injured reserve. So Mac Jones is going to start. But, George, let's get to what I think everybody has the issues with here going into this week. Now, I was somebody that drafted, in my salary cap lead had Christian McCaffrey. So there's no replacing him. I did not have Jordan Mason, and I did not get Isaac Guerrero. And I think a lot of people smartly went to the waiver wire this week, picked up Guerrero, and they're probably going to start him this week. But again, I don't know that this is a Denver Broncos situation where even the third string guy. Maybe it is. Maybe it is the Reuben Drones, Mike Anderson, Quentin Griffin. Maybe that's what San Francisco is. Anybody that starts is good.
I think a majority of these leagues, yeah. Guerrero, he's a solid player. Is he McCaffrey? No. Is he Mason? Probably not. But if Trent Williams does return, we still don't know that yet. All right. I think he can do some damage here. I think he can here. So, yes, Guerrero was the most popular pick this week. And a lot of leagues, Craig, and I did it in some of my leagues too, I blew my budget, to try and get it. Doesn't mean I got him, by the way. Somebody may have had more money than I. There was a funny story involving Guerrero. And that in a league, it was posted on Twitter, so you might have seen it, that a league, somebody was 2-11, wasn't paying attention, and it was already told he was going to be kicked out of the league next year. But week 14 is a regular week, and he spent his entire budget on Guerrero to screw the league over. He didn't spend $1, so he got him. That's a pretty D move, but also really funny.
Yeah. I don't know what that means, D move, but we'll use that on a future show. All right, so here is the other big piece of news that came down on Friday that we weren't expecting. And by the way, there are 2 other teams with serious running back issues in terms of injuries. There may still be players, folks, on the waiver wire, believe it or not, to pick up. The New York Jets, George, they play in Miami this weekend. Breece Hall didn't practice all week and was downgraded to doubtful on Friday. So I don't know if this is just a week off or it's the season off, but Breece Hall was nowhere near where he was drafted in terms of value. And we still are really unclear. We're in murky waters with the Chicago Bears situation at running back too. Why am I bringing this up? George, they play. Both those teams play. Jets play. Bears play. So if you're scouring the waiver wire, if Braylon Allen for some reason is still out there, and probably not in most leagues, I'm guessing he's gone, for the Chicago Bears, Travis Homer is somebody that I picked up in a fantasy league. Do I want to start him? No, but I do remember him. He was okay in Seattle. He played at the University of Miami. I'm a little familiar with him. There can be no level of embarrassment at this point. You have to field a team this week. It's just not going to be easy for a lot of fantasy owners.
Absolutely. I'm looking in a league here. One player we didn't mention who's also may not play is Kenneth Walker. All right, he's got a couple of injuries there. I think it's the calf and something else I can't remember here. And he didn't practice on Thursday. Friday was iffy. A lot of problems here. All right, and Travis Homer is someone who's available, and I could claim. I'm looking at Jerome Ford. He's actually the best that's out there, in my opinion, so I'll probably have to claim him if Walker's out. I don't have any dead spots on my roster. I have to release somebody who's good or decent, not a running back. I am going to claim him. But yes, running back is a nightmare. You already went through all the backs, right? Brian Robinson's another back who's out this week due to a bye. This is not fun. And as you said, no, there's no embarrassment. There's no, you got to do what you got to do. And I'm looking for I mean, look, most of these guys we're talking about here, you're praying for fall into the end zone. Somehow get into the end zone, right? Give me my 6 points, maybe get 40 yards. I'll take double digits and run with any of these guys here. But yeah, running back is it's a huge problem anyway. Monster problem this week.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd be starting a running back named Sincere this week, but I sincerely may have to do that. I mean, it's really gotten to that point. Other big story in the NFL is that if you have Trevor Lawrence in a dynasty league, you can wait till next year. If you have him now, you can let him go. He was placed on IR. He's going to undergo left shoulder surgery. That huge hit that was made by the player on the Houston Texans, Al-Shahid Azir, he was suspended for 3 games. Mac Jones actually played well in the absence of Lawrence. I got to tell you, I mean, I feel like this story went way too far. I felt like there was other stuff that we could talk about. Obviously, it was a bad hit. Obviously, the guy should be suspended. Why was there any debate? Like, I mean, I didn't get that whole story. Let's put it that way this week. Everyone was trying to vilify this guy that was the player. Yes, he was dirty. Yes, he made a bad hit. Yes, he got suspended for 3 games. What else is there to say? He's going to pay the price. If he does it again, he's going to get a longer suspension. Nothing new in the NFL.
I think Houston made a couple of bad mistakes here, and they went overboard defending him, right? I mean, D'Amico Ryans pretty much blamed Trevor Lawrence for the hit, and the GM went off the deep end as well. This is one, hey, and everything you said is true. It was a bad hit. I'm not saying he's a dirty player, but it was a dirty hit. All right, they need to let it go. All right, take your suspension, eat it, and move on from there. But they did not help things they prolonged it all week. Like I said, I think it was Ryan's on either Monday or Tuesday. He had his press conference, and the GM the next day. That doesn't help things. When you defend them, I understand you want to defend your player, but like I said, Ryan's pretty much blamed Lawrence. What are you doing? All right, what are you doing here? You know that's not going to help your player, especially when he's had other questionable hits or even this season. Was it the game? I think it was a game against the Bears. Was there a Sunday night game against them where he punched somebody on the sideline and got away with it? You know, so let's not act like this is an angel here. I'm not saying he's a dirty player, but I think the suspension is well justified here. I'm of that belief, by the way. I've always thought when you hurt somebody, there should be an independent doctor that goes, well, Lawrence is going to be out for 3 weeks. Well, guess how long you're going to be suspended for? 3 games. You're out as long as that player's out, as long as it's an independent doctor, not the team doctor.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And, you know, naturally, the Jacksonville Jaguars are probably going to have a new coach next year. A lot of changes are going to be made. Dynasty leagues, I still think you got to hold out hope for Lawrence, who's now going to go through another coach. Unfortunately for him in the NFL, but we'll watch the injury reports here for you this weekend. And also don't forget that Sunday morning, Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker, they have the final word on that. So for those of you who are playing fantasy football and you find yourself in these extreme spots with players that you've never played before or have to, you are not alone. There's a lot of injuries in the NFL and there's a lot of teams off. So this is going to be the strangest, probably lowest scoring week that we've seen all season long in fantasy football. That was not the case on Thursday night, where we saw the Lions and Packers go at it and go toe-to-toe right down to the end. When we come back after the break, George and I will recap the fantasy ramifications from the Lions and Packers game next on Fantasy Sports Today. Don't go away.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
OU is definitely better than Syracuse. Miami's lost by 4 and by 5. But that offense is so good.
Right.
You cannot run away from them.
But the perception is, if we're talking about those two teams,
Yep.
Oklahoma's just this blue blood program, and Syracuse and Georgia Tech are not.
Right.
So that's why we give you a reason then to keep out Miami from the playoff.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of a week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards.
That was
Lincoln!
But he had that program was already going there.
Only on SportsGrid.
Well, the question is, did you start anyone on Thursday Night Football in the first round of your playoff matchup? And did you play against anyone? I think that's probably a better question to ask, too. Craig Mish, George Kurtz, back with you. George, 34-31 was the final. Lions beat the Packers, 65 points scored in the game. So this was a pretty good game if you started Jared Goff, if you started Josh Jacobs with 3 touchdowns. Beyond that, some mediocre points being scored. Jamison Williams, I think, put up like a 10 or 11 or 12 spot. Amon-Ra St. Brown, naturally a quiet game. But, yeah, Williams was a pretty big winner, I think, from that game, especially as a wide receiver 3 in a week where a lot of folks were off. But very exciting game, I thought. And in the end, the Lions going for it over and over again really proved that that's kind of the way you got to play offensively in the NFL.
Yeah, Campbell's not afraid. All right, Campbell's not afraid to gamble. There you go. And listen, I probably would have kicked the field goal at the end, to get the go ahead here and give the Packers the ball back, because you get stuffed on 4th and 1, and we are crushing you, right? Everyone is crushing you that you didn't kick that field goal. But Campbell's not afraid. Got it. Montgomery got the first down there. They win the game. Green Bay never gets the ball back. And you're right. If you're facing Jacobs, I think you need to be a little optimistic. Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns, but it only came with 60 yards. All right, so he only got 24.6. He had another touchdown called back, right? Another touchdown was called back on that. I didn't think it was a great call there. It looked like Watson and the defender ran into each other, not Watson doing a little hip check there. I thought that was more of an
You can't be
accident than
happy
anything
that
else.
you can't be happy you went up against Josh Jacobs on Thursday.
I didn't say happy. I said not. Listen, 3
could've been
touchdowns. I think you have
worse. How
over
much
100
worse?
yards. 3 touchdowns. You average out. Well, anybody said 3 touchdowns in fantasy. That's over. It's over 30
It's
points.
180
Easy.
yards.
It's easy over 30 points. You lucked out if you had to face Josh Jacobs.
You in what world do you live in?
I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying here. If you
I'm
face
not.
a player who has 3 touchdowns, average is over
Right.
30 fantasy points. You got out of that with only 24. It could have been much worse, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yes, it could have been worse. He could have given up 70 fantasy points to the guy. The guy had a great game, probably best fantasy game he's had all season. I'm going to guess without even looking at any other stats for him this year. That's a lot of touchdowns, George. 3 touchdowns, 66 yards. Played against him, you're throwing stuff at the TV. I think personally. Jordan Love, let's talk about him now. He is somebody that did not have a great game. 206 passing yards, 23 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, and no interceptions. So you're feeling good if you played against him. If you had him, and especially the 12-team league, you're not feeling good at all. Christian Watson was a player that caught a very, very long deep ball that put him over the top in terms of yardage. He had 114 receiving yards on 4 receptions. But before we get to Detroit, let's analyze Green Bay here a little bit, George. It was the Watson game yesterday. It was the Reed game the week before. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you could end up winning your fantasy football championship with Watson or Reed if you knew which guy was going to go off each week.
And that's the problem. You don't know which guy's going to go off each week, right? Watson, Reed, Dobbs was out with a concussion. You don't have to worry about him. Wicks, who's it going to be? Reed had a donut, 0.
Wow.
Just awfully strange here that he had nothing in this game on Thursday night here. Watson was the big guy. Didn't get to the end zone, but I said had the big catch there. And he was the big guy you want. That Tucker Kraft actually was valuable as well here. Green Bay's an infuriating offense. The only thing I feel comfortable starting Green Bay is Jacobs. That's really it here. I don't want to have to start anybody else. Watson, I don't want to say he's a massive disappointment as far as fantasy land's concerned here, but he's close to it. All right, just there's too many cooks in the kitchen here. You don't know what you're getting game in and game out, and he's hurt all the time. So big game Thursday night, great, that's fantastic. But and I did start in one league, but that's a deeper league with different kinds of rules. We can start up to 8 wide receivers. So it worked out there. But I also had to start Love. Didn't work out there.
No. Jared Goff, somebody in a 2-quarterback league that I started this past week, extremely happy going into the weekend. Although the rest of my team is a shell of what it was during the year, but 30 fantasy points yesterday, 3 touchdown passes for Jared Goff, and over 283 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Sorry, I didn't have my glasses on there. David Montgomery did not have a big game. George, he scored a touchdown, which he did very early on in this one. He also had 51 rushing yards. But the thing that happened with Montgomery is, why do you think did he not play in the second half? I was watching the game, and it was all Gibbs. Is that something they generally do when they save Montgomery for the fourth quarter? I thought that was a strange development there.
Makes you wonder if there's something going on with the shoulder. Remember the injury he had the week before Thanksgiving? Going on there. He did play, though. I mean, he got the game-winning carry there, so they trusted him. All right, he was doing well. Got that 4th and inches. That sealed the game there. Maybe Gibbs was hot. Maybe this is what makes the Lions so dangerous, right? Because they can have 2 separate game plans, completely different game plans with 2 different types of runners. Montgomery's more of a ground and pound. Gibbs is more of the lightning guy. So they got 2 completely different game plans. And maybe the game plan in the third quarter for whatever, or coming out of the break at halftime was for Gibbs to play. So I don't really have any answers for you there. Actually, he did play late, so there's no injury to worry about here. I think it was more game plan than anything else.
Yeah, Gibbs had the bigger game. He had 6 receptions, 43 yards. So in PPR leagues, that's 10 points plus the receiving yards plus the touchdown. So better game for Gibbs. Tim Patrick was really the fantasy wide receiving star of the day. But I don't think this helped anybody, George, honestly, because I don't think anybody played Tim Patrick. He had 2 touchdowns, his first in years, 6 receptions, 43 yards. Khalif Raymond is out, so Patrick is in, and that's kind of what's happened here. Even with the big game, if you're moving on in the playoffs in some way, probably not somebody I would pick up.
Yeah, this is where the anger comes in. You mentioned throwing stuff at the TV for Jacobs. I was throwing stuff at the TV for Patrick because I have Amon St. Brown. All right, he disappeared. I mean, he had 3 catches on the first drive, then we didn't see him again until the fourth quarter. It was all just strange how they were going about that. You keep seeing those touchdown passes, and it's 17, not 14. Why isn't it 14? Very angry last night about that. But hey, he made the most of his opportunities. Good for him. I think it was his first touchdown like 800 days, 3 years. So good. But you're right. Probably didn't help too many people in fantasy land.
No. Tight end Tucker Kraft also scored a touchdown in that game. We should definitely mention 65 points. That's a really good fantasy night. And we'll see if it carries over for some of you going into the weekend. Meanwhile, I know a lot of you still have to make waiver wire moves. I am one of them, holding out for the latest injury report. So when we come back, we'll dive into that. We'll also talk about San Francisco's running back situation. And if Isaac Guerendo is not next up, who could even be the guy after that in San Francisco? Because the situation has called for whoever runs the ball in San Francisco has had some success. We'll discuss that next when we return on Fantasy Sports Today.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell is one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back. Christian McCaffrey is out for the season. Jordan Mason not going to help you in fantasy as well. That's the dynamic that's gone on all season long with the San Francisco 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, number one overall fantasy pick because of injuries, is one of the biggest busts in the history of fantasy football. And again, injury related. George and I are going to dive into this a little bit later in the show. So the name is Isaac Guerendo. That's the number one name on the waiver wire. And who would have thought this late in the season? It's the most important. 76% owned. This will be almost 100 by the time the game kicks off on Sunday. So what are we going to learn, George? We're going to learn as to all of these things that we have been discussing. The old Denver Broncos adage, a different Shanahan coaching that team, right? It was Mike Shanahan. It was Terrell Davis. It was Mike Anderson. It was Olandis Gary. It was Ruben Drones. Do you remember all these names? It was Quentin Britt. It didn't matter, George. It did not matter. It was whoever's name is the running back in Denver was really good in fantasy. Is this going to happen with Isaac Guerendo?
I think Guerendo's going to do some damage, yeah. All right. Listen, I don't think he's going to be fantastic. San Fran has other problems. Like I said, Trent Williams, who's questionable, if he can't go, then I don't know if how they're going to be playing Guerendo. I think Trent Williams is a huge loss for San Fran. Outside of Purdy, I think he may mean the most to that offense here. I'm trying to look up how many points Chicago is about mid-pack as far as giving up fantasy points to a running back. All right, so it is what it is here. I think if Trent Williams plays, I think Guerendo does damage. I do. I think he'll get you double-digit fantasy points. Good chance for a touchdown. So you're looking at, I think, in the 12 to 16-point range here. That being said, I think he gets a longer run than maybe a normal third string. We have seen him earlier in the year, and he did look good. I think he'll get at least a couple of series before they go, all right, this guy sucks. We'll go moving on to the next guy, Patrick Taylor, all right, or someone like that. So I think he gets a couple of series to prove he can do it. Assuming he gets up to a nice start here, I think he's the guy you want. Like I said, I expect 70 rushing yards, a couple of catches here, another 20 yards. Like I said, if you get to the end zone, you get you 16. If he doesn't get to the end zone, I think you're looking at 10 to 12.
Yeah, it could be. And if not, as you mentioned, Taylor, who's only 5% owned, and then there's a player on their roster that's like 1% owned. His name, George, is Israel Abanikanda. Israel Abanikanda. Believe it or not, that guy in 16-team leagues and in dynasty leagues is picked up. He was picked up in my dynasty league, George. Why? Because, again, this narrative that whoever runs for San Francisco is the guy to own. He was off the Jets practice squad. We will see if he makes an impact in this game, but maybe a dynasty league is the way to go there. Meanwhile, the Chargers suffered a big loss with J.K. Dobbins being out, and now Gus Edwards gets his chance again to shine. But those are the very meager numbers on the season. 238 rushing yards. That's not for a couple weeks. That's for the whole year. And 2 receptions, not going to catch the ball, 1 touchdown. We talked before the season about this player, Kimani Vidal. I know a lot of the fantasy analysts are still holding out hope. They're running out of time, though, George, here for him to play.
You watched that game last week, Chargers in Atlanta. It was an ugly game. Edwards may have only had 30 yards, but it came on 6 carries. So he actually was doing damage here. They just didn't give him the ball enough for whatever reason here. So I think Edwards can be okay. Do I think he's going to be Dobbins? No, I don't. You also want to make sure McConkey plays on Sunday night versus Kansas City as well. Without McConkey, team's going to look to stop the rushing attack more. So I think he can be okay. Listen, of all the backs we've talking about and how much trouble we're in, if Gus Edwards is out there, I'd be happy. I would be happy to take Gus Edwards because we're talking about bottom of the bottom here. But I'll take my chance with Gus. He's not out there in my league either. So there's nothing I can do about him. If Adala's out there, yeah, I'm probably claiming him too. Once again, you're hoping to find the right guy. It's all we're doing here is hoping to find the right guy. There's no one here who's going to tell you, oh, this is the guy you want. No. There's like 6-8 guys here that we can talk about. And you're hoping you get the right one. We all need the touchdown deodorant. That's what's going to save us.
All right, let's go to Jacksonville here. And Tank Bigsby, who was doing so well, by the way, before he got hurt and before their bye week, came back with not much of an impact last week, although his numbers at the end of the season are going to look like a guy for next year, George. 4 touchdowns, 547 yards, but limited on carries. I do wonder if he gets a little bit more of a look this week, but their quarterbacking situation isn't the best. I know Mac Jones played very well in the second half last week. I have Bigsby. I'm having a hard time putting him in my starting lineup.
I would take a shot with Bigsby, by the way. I would hope Mac Jones continues to play well. Tennessee laid down last week against Washington. I know it was on the road, but they laid down. So maybe there's a chance for Jacksonville to do some damage this week.
All right, let's take a quick timeout on Fantasy Sports Today. When we come back next, the highs and lows of playing fantasy football. Who are some of the biggest letdowns in the first few rounds of our fantasy football drafts? We'll tell you about that next. And also, we'll play some buy or sell a little bit later in the show. You're watching Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish along with George Kurtz, and we'll be back right after this. Don't go away.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. Look, it happens every year. You draft somebody in the first round in fantasy and they don't work out. But, I mean, this is a pretty much epic year for that in fantasy. I mean, you basically had the number 1 overall pick in the draft play 3 games. Christian McCaffrey rushed for just 200 yards on the season. He's on IR, 146 receiving yards, 15 receptions. He didn't score a touchdown, George. We've seen this before. David Johnson comes to mind to me. That's the most recent name in fantasy where he was the number 1. Some drafts, I think Peterson may have been 1 or 2. I don't remember that year. If you look, you could tell me. But I know David Johnson was either the 1 or the 2. He played 1 game, and he got hurt in the second, and he didn't play the rest of the season. This is exactly who Christian McCaffrey was this season, but it was the most bizarre because we were told he was going to play the first week of the season, and then he just missed half the year. So, oddly enough, he is the single biggest disappointment, not just this year, but in the last 5 or 10 years, without a doubt. And I don't think there's any scenario, George, next year where he's a first-round draft pick. Don't get me wrong. He's getting drafted in the 2nd or 3rd round next year. But no matter how healthy they say he is, I think his days going in the 1st round are done.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think he won't go number 1 overall, that's for sure. But I think there'll be somebody who still goes the 1st round. I think he will. It won't be me. All right, I'm pretty much done taking running backs in the 1st round. They just get hurt too much or whatever. I want to go wide receiver, especially in today's game. All right, so it's built for the passing game. But I think somebody still would take him 1st round because they're going to want a running back, and they're not going to want to wait till mid or late 2nd round to get it back here. They're like, oh, I can't wait that long. I won't get anybody. They'll all be gone. So I think he might still have a 1st round shot, assuming everything comes back healthy from the injury here. That was gruesome, by the way. You saw that they showed one camera angle. It looked like his whole calf shriveled up on that play. So that was just, I really thought it was like tore his calf in half here more than he did the knee injury there. It's a brutal injury. Maybe you don't deserve to be surprised, by the way. He's had injuries before. This is not a shock that he got hurt here. But you're right. What probably is more annoying is that Shanahan told, day to day, week to week. Now he's not going on IR. He'll be fine. We thought that, all right, I can miss him 2 weeks. Not a big deal here. But no, he plays 3 games. Just brutal here. I only had him in 1 league. I only had the first overall pick in 1 league here. And the only reason I got him in that league, to be honest, because that was an auto-drafted team. So the only thing I Christian McCaffrey was auto-drafted because a buddy of mine begged me to take over the team because I guess somebody dropped out or whatever. So, yay me. But it is what it is. But he's not the only one, Craig. I mean, Breece Hall, Tyreek Hill, not great 1st-round picks either.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, somebody took Breece Hall 2, 3, 4, probably didn't go further than that. I mean, at least you could say with Breece Hall, he had 1,000 total yards and 6 touchdowns. And when we say had, by the way, we're not sure that Breece Hall is done, but he is listed as doubtful for this week. And this is the kind of player, though, George, that I could easily buy right back into next year. Like, I would have no hesitation in thinking that this could get better. What's so fascinating to me about him, George, in particular, is that he was better with what I thought was a worse quarterbacking situation last year, and that just didn't turn out to be the case.
This whole situation is strange with the Jets, right? Because you're absolutely right? Theoretically, it was a worse quarterback situation, and yet he played much better. Now, the offensive line's terrible for the Jets. It's just bad. It's funny. If you ask me right now, would I rather have Christian McCaffrey next year or Hall? I would need to see what the Jets do to that offensive line. Who's going to be the quarterback here? I might still go McCaffrey. Let you know that. I might call. It might be that play drops to the 2nd round for me. But like I said, that's an offseason. We need to see that. Do they fix the offensive line? Who's going to be the quarterback? Is it a pure rookie? Are they bringing over a caretaker? Something like that. Is it Kirk Cousins? Who I think his days at Atlanta might be over as well. So we'll see on that. But I think Hall is still good. He's still good. But that situation has to be corrected by the Jets.
All right. Now, at quarterback, we have a lot. And, a lot of folks went into the season thinking that Anthony Richardson, based on the first 2 games that he played last year, and then he got hurt, remember, but he wasn't taken high last year. He was just going to build off that, and it went back the other way. Now, he has looked better lately, and maybe this is going to be an indication for next season. But if you took him in the first 5 rounds or 6 of any fantasy draft, you didn't get anything. I mean, this guy had 9 interceptions and 11 touchdowns, and if you lose points for picks, he really gave you almost a 0 on the season. He was benched for Joe Flacco at one point. Again, George, he has come back. He has looked better. They beat New England last week, but very much a mixed bag. And simply put, this isn't a player next year that's going to go higher, I think, than he went this past year. He's going to be one of those players that people need to see more of.
He was massively hyped coming at the draft time. People were talking about taking him number 1 quarterback overall. All right, it was just nuts. And I know I mentioned several times while doing this show that if not for the fact that he looked good last year, off his preseason, he wouldn't be starting, period. He was terrible in the preseason. He couldn't complete a handoff. All right, that carried over to the regular season. He is playing better now for whatever reason, so good for him. But he might have already killed your team. All right, now in a 1 quarterback league, you should have been okay. You moved on from, you got somebody else, a Matthew Stafford type. You probably survived here. But in a 2 quarterback league, that might have sunk your team. Especially your 6 points for a touchdown pass. That's awfully hard to make up. You probably had a third quarterback on your roster, but it was probably someone terrible. Nobody all that great here. So, he could have really sunk your team. I thought Richardson was definitely a huge disappointment in the early going. He's playing better now. Might be too late for you.
Same with C.J. Stroud, another player coming off a fantastic year, not just 2 games, but a fantastic year last year. The projections for Stroud was 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. Instead, I don't know that he's going to get to 4,000 yards, and I don't know that he's even going to get to 20 touchdowns on the season, George. And what's funny, he has 9 interceptions, too. A lot of folks say, well, it was the injury to Stephon Diggs. Are you kidding me? This guy did not have Stephon Diggs last year. I have no idea where that analysis is coming from. I just think what happened, George, is like sports, baseball, football, basketball, and everything else. This is my opinion only, is that when a team comes out of nowhere to have a really good year as a rookie, second-year player, etc., the film is out. And analytics and film study are better now than they ever have been. They're incredible. I think, George, the defenses just went back. They looked at his tendencies. He's still been okay, but they clearly figured out how to play against Houston's offense. Maybe we'll say the same thing about Washington next year with Jaden Daniels. It's very powerful, or even Caleb Williams. But it's very clear to me that Houston's step back is because they took such a big step forward unexpectedly last year.
Yeah, I love where you're going with that because I think that's part of it as well. I think, once again, second-year play. We say it in baseball all the time, right? It's a game of adjustments here over the first couple of months, over the next couple of months. I think the same thing. Teams looked at Stroud, looked at him hard during the offseason and figured out how to beat him. He hasn't made those adjustments, or Houston hasn't made those adjustments yet. We'll see how it comes. Maybe the bye week helps him here, but he's definitely been a disappointment. Some people had him as the number 5 quarterback. Not quite as high as Richardson, but he was behind, the Mahomes of the world and Allen, Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Then they had him right there with Burrow. And boy, if you took Stroud over Burrow, you're probably not feeling too good.
No, I think everyone took Stroud over Burrow going into the year. Patrick Mahomes was taking over both those guys. Well, finally, his numbers are starting to look a little bit better. I mean, this was getting dicey, George, with him having, I think, like 10 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. He's finally up to 20 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. It's going to be, a bust of a season compared to where he normally gets drafted. But now he's starting to become playable again, George. I'm sure you've noticed this. He's like starting to have better games. So maybe down the stretch, we'll see more of what we thought we were going to see this year.
Yeah, and you're right. If you were able to survive, maybe he's going to bring you a championship. He's going to play better now. I certainly could see that. Chargers, Cleveland, Houston, and then Pittsburgh in your championship week. The Pittsburgh one you don't like. Chargers isn't great, but it's not poor either. Cleveland and Houston, though, in the semis and the finals there, you could go do some damage there. So I think Mahomes will end up being top 10. Not top 4, not top 5, but he'll end up being top 10, maybe even top 8. So he'll save his season where we won't be complaining too much, assuming you survived the first 8 weeks of the season where he wasn't leading to any victories.
No, he wasn't. But guess what? There was another player drafted in the first round of fantasy football drafts that also will be considered a bust at the end of the season. We'll dive into the most disappointing wide receivers in fantasy football coming up next, including one player who was the league winner 2 years ago in fantasy football and got paid for it too. We'll be back with more fantasy sports today, right after this.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
OU is definitely better than Syracuse. Miami's lost by 4 and by 5. But that offense is so good.
Right.
You cannot run away from them.
But the perception is, if we're talking about those two teams, Oklahoma's just this blue blood program, and Syracuse and Georgia Tech are not.
Right.
So that's why we give you a reason to keep out Miami from the playoff.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than game time decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish along with George Kurtz as we continue to look at some of the underachievers in fantasy this season. Marvin Harrison Jr. was a first-round pick this year in fantasy football. And George, if I gave you the record of the Arizona Cardinals and I told you that they were above 500 with a chance to win the division, you would have said Marvin Harrison is having a fantasy MVP type season. Not really. I would tell you that you could do worse. I mean, he has 7 touchdowns and 606 receiving yards. This is not a first-round pick, of course, in fantasy football. But I got to tell you, he's not my biggest letdown at this position, but it just goes to show you that drafting rookie wide receivers in the first round isn't necessarily a slam dunk.
He was a third-round pick in most leagues. So you talk about a wide receiver, too. Those numbers are still disappointing. Not the touchdown. Touchdowns are finicky, all right? Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't here. But 41 receptions, I mean, I think the Cardinals have played, 13 games? That's 3 a game. That's not good. All right? You probably want that close to double. All right, so that's a problem there. That's points you lost there. The yardage, obviously, you'd like to get higher as well. But you said it, right? You're drafting a rookie wide receiver. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. Tough position. Got to learn get that chemistry at the quarterback. Got to learn all those routes. Got to know when to be the hot receiver. When the blitz is coming, so you got to get open quick. That sort of thing. So it could be a learning.
Tua Tagovailoa missed a portion of the season, but now that he's come back, he's a better version of himself. He's just not throwing to the receivers anymore, George. I don't know what is going on with this guy. Jalen Waddle has just 45 receptions for 601 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Tyreek Hill, he looks like Tyreek Hill. They just don't throw him the ball. It seems to me, and I know we talked about this last week, George, that they're just not going to allow Tua to drop back, wait, and bomb. He's just going to throw it to A-Chain over the middle, or he's going to throw it to Jonnu Smith, or if Jalen Waddle gets open quick, or Tyreek, great. But those long bomb passing plays that Tua drops back, waits, throws, that hasn't been in the playbook.
No, once again, I think you're reading it correctly. They don't want him taking those hits here. I mean, for Tyreek, you sort of been saved the last 4 weeks because he has had that touchdown. So you've got the touchdown deodorant here. You got lucky last week with the deflected ball that he caught in the end zone. So I think they got you 20 points for him. But he hasn't had over 100 yards since week 1. Week 1. All right, and that was on that big play versus Jackson. I think he had a 60-yard bomb, if I remember correctly there. Other than that, I mean, a lot of the numbers are ugly here. Some in the 20s, a couple of 40s, an 8. I mean, it's not pretty here. It is better with Tua. It's better, but as you said, you're not getting those big plays in because he's not dropping back waiting for it. It's all little plays. You have to hope Tyreek breaks a tackle or two, and that's how he takes it to the house.
2 years ago, fantasy football MVP, very clear. It was Deebo Samuel. Had almost 2,000 yards between rushing and receiving. What reason would you possibly have to not take Deebo Samuel in a fantasy league, George? These numbers are shocking for the season. I mean, they are shocking. 38 receptions, 531 yards, and 1 touchdown in a season where Christian McCaffrey basically did not play. I mean, I know that Deebo missed a game too. This one to me did not see coming, and the 49ers couldn't have seen coming. They signed this guy to a long-term extension immediately after that season as well.
Yeah, been a major bust, right? You said no McCaffrey, no Ayuk. You would think, okay, he's the number one target now. Here we go. I mean, Juwan Jennings has done well. I mean, maybe defenses are taking him out. I can certainly see that. Kittle's been banged up too and missed some games, so I'm sure that's hurt as well, as all the attention's been on him, but you expected more. I do think there's injuries involved here too. I think he can play through them, but I don't think he's anywhere near 100% either here. I also think this, Craig, I think the Niners move on from him after the season. I think they know they got to make some cuts because they got to sign Purdy to a massive contract. And I think Debo's going to be that guy who's going to be on the outs. I think they know Juwan Jennings, pretty good. I mean, we drafted Ricky Pearsall. He looks good. We got to make cuts somewhere. Sort of like the Cowboys moving on from Amari Cooper. You got to do what you got to do here to afford everybody. So I think Debo could find himself in another uniform after this season.
That would be crazy. All right, we went into the year thinking that Josh Allen's got to throw to someone. But that really didn't turn out to be true. I mean, I guess he threw to a couple of wide receivers, but he throws to himself, right? He throws it up, they pass it, it hits somebody, and then he catches it and scores a touchdown. I think we learned our lesson here with the Buffalo Bills. They're never going to have a tight end one. That's just never going to happen. It doesn't matter who they have there. Dalton Kincaid's very talented, George. But, I mean, Tucker Kraft is having a better year than Dalton Kincaid. 356 receiving yards. He has just 2 touchdowns. They even went as far as to add Amari Cooper to the roster too. This is without Stephon Diggs. So I think just we learned our lesson, and it's not that you can't go back to a player, but Dalton Kincaid is not going to be the Gronk of the Bills. It ain't happening.
No, this is extremely disappointing. I know I have a ticket on Kincaid to get over his touchdown prop, which is not going to come close. I think it was 7.5 offhand, so that's not hitting. I think most of us thought. I think the thought was logical. It made sense. No Diggs, no Davis. You didn't really replace those guys with anybody, right? Shakir, blah, nothing great here. So, hey, it's going to be a strong Kincaid guy, Kincaid year, right? He's going to have to throw the Kincaid all the time. Big target over the middle, good tight end. Hasn't worked out, know. And what did Tom Brady's ex complain about a couple of years ago, that Brady can't throw the ball and catch the ball? So not true. All right, Josh Allen proved that you can throw the ball and catch the ball and get a touchdown out of it. So, I mean, listen, Josh Allen's having a great season. He's made, what was it, chicken salad out of chicken, whatever. So good for him. The likely MVP favorite right now. But, yeah, Kincaid, extremely disappointing.
Let's run through some streaming defenses if we could right before we take a break here. And I'm going to give you some options here, George, for streaming. We got the Saints taking on the Giants this week. I know the matchup looks good, but it is on the road, man. And then when the Saints are away from home, I get nervous. Eagles defense has been fantastic lately. They seem to be shutting down everyone and sacking the quarterback a ton. Got the Cardinals going up against the Seattle Seahawks. Possibility there. They seem to have some good opportunity, interceptions, fumble recoveries. And then you have the Dolphins. Now without Breece Hall, I guess, taking on the Jets. Dolphins are in a great spot here for this game. But their defense hasn't been good all season.
Listen, the 4 we mentioned there, Philadelphia's the one I want, right? You said they're playing great. They look really good here. Arizona, no thanks. Miami, okay, no Hall. Maybe Rodgers can throw some picks. He sucks anyway. And I think about the other. New Orleans, the hot one. But aren't they a bad team too?
I agree. Let's take a quick timeout. When we come back next, George has got his bold predictions.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of what does it mean for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
OU is definitely better than Syracuse. Miami's lost by 4 and by 5. But that offense is so good.
Right.
You cannot run away from them.
But the perception is, if we're talking about those two teams, Oklahoma's just this blue blood program, and Syracuse and Georgia Tech are not.
Right.
So that's why we give you a reason to keep out Miami from the playoff.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports today here on SportsGrid. Craig Mish along with George Kurtz. Also, don't forget to catch Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker on Sunday morning. They'll have the latest with all the injury updates and everything happening in the National Football League. All right, as we close out hour number one, as we always do here on the show, let's go over to George Kurtz, who's getting ready to hit on some very big, bold predictions. George?
All right, and we may need to hit this week, right? Because we have so many teams on bye. Remember, Washington, Houston, Denver, Baltimore, New England, Indianapolis, all off this week. First player we're going to talk about, as I probably could have chosen several players from the Cincinnati Bengals, but Joe Burrow just deserves a lot of love here. He's been Terry. I know they're not winning games, and there's not much you can do about that. The defense is deplorable. The Dallas defense has played better since the return of Micah Parsons, but we don't know if Trayvon Diggs is going to play. He's questionable here, and if he can't go, his secondary is eminently beatable. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins could have a field day in this game. I think Mike Gesicki goes off as well here. The problem with Gesicki is they have several other tight ends they like to throw to. Chase Brown might have a big game. What I'm trying to tell you is that the Cincinnati Bengals are scoring points Monday night. I see 30-plus coming in. I wouldn't shock if they reach closer to 40 here. Joe Burrow, I think minimum here, 303 touchdowns. I think that's his floor. Okay, I think he'd easily go higher than that. I think he finishes this week as the top fantasy quarterback. Joe Burrow, Cincinnati Bengals, great season. Hey, if they were a playoff team, we'd be talking about him as a league MVP here, but they're not, so we're not talking about that. Miami Dolphins play the New York Jets here. We just talked. This like Miami's going to have this ball a lot. You know, I think they're going to control the ball for 34, 35 minutes of this game, and I think they're a team that, listen, we want to win the game and move on, kill the clock. That's H8. All right, I think he's going to have a great game, catching the ball and running the ball here. Craig mentioned it earlier, and I completely agree. He's catching a lot of balls because Tua is not standing back there. He's not taking 7-step drops here and waiting 3, 4, 5 seconds to get Tyreek Hill or Waddle on deep plays. No, he's dumping it off. So even when it changes like running the ball, he's still catching the ball here. Extremely valuable, 100 total yards here. And it's this. Atlanta has no defense. All right, that secondary is poor. All right, there's no pass rush here. Donald's going to have all day to throw here. I was sort of debating. Do I want to go Donald or do I want to go Justin Jefferson? Could have gone either one here because I think Jefferson goes off. I think he gets that touchdown we've been waiting for since like week 3 from JJ. I think he gets over 100 yards. But I think Donald goes off in this game. 325, 3 touchdowns. Top 5, top 3 fantasy quarterback this week. Not quite as good as Joe Burrow. I don't think he has that kind of upside here, but he's going to have a great game as well. And by the way, if Kirk Cousins has another poor game, I think next week we're talking about Michael Penix starting the rest of the season for the Falcons because Cousins looks worse and worse and worse each day. Make sure they have a fantasy injury. Well, he can't play because he's hurt. Next, Brock Bowers. About time we give this guy some love. We talked about how hard it is. You know, we talked about Marvin Harrison, rookie wide receivers, how they don't always hit in year one. Tight end is even rougher because he has to learn everything I said about Harrison, the route tree, the hot read. Trust with the quarterback, and he's got to be able to block, right? And all the run schemes and everything else here. Bowers just been fantastic. I know he's running routes more than blocking here, but you get my point. He's been fantastic here. I don't see that stopping. All right, he's their main option, their main weapon. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Brock Bowers, another great week, another tight end 1 week, 100 yards, and a score for Brock Bowers. I don't know if that'll come in a win, mind you, but it's against the Tampa Bay defense as well, and that also helps there. Last one here, Giants can't stop anybody. All right, this is a bad team. Lawrence just went on the IR here. Alvin Kamara should go bananas. Absolutely bananas in this game. I don't know if I say rush for 150 yards here, but I think he's going to get 150 total yards. All right, I think he gets at least one, if not 2 touchdowns. Remember, no Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is gone. All right, so that means all those touchdowns that Taysom was stealing, and he was stealing touchdowns. Not stealing this week. Kamara gets back in the end zone at least once this week, maybe twice. 150 total yards. He goes off against the New York Giants here. It is in Giant land, which actually that might help more because maybe the wind will be bad and they have to run the ball over and over again. So that's my 5 bold predictions here. Joe Burrow, Devon Chain, Sam Darnold, Alvin Kamara, and I forgot one. Brock Bowers. The tight end always gets left out. Always gets left out here. All right, so they're all, at least 2 of them going off this week. Let's hope we hit on some of these. We need the help this week with all the bye weeks here. I'm George Kurtz. Craig Mish will be back. We'll be back for hour 2 of Fantasy Sports Today. We're going to talk a little hold or drop, the future of Christian McCaffrey, and boy, everybody's going to be talking about that. A little Sunday fantasy preview coming up as well here, and we'll get to our little, the 1 minute where I get to complain about something. So stay with us. Fantasy Sports Today. George and Craig back after this.
She was recruited to Oregon partially by, guess who? Mark Campbell and Xavi Lopez. They know what they're doing. And I'm going to say this right now, folks. I'm going to say this right now. Mark Campbell's one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in women's college basketball right now.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
We got the NBA Cup going on. Not that anybody really cares per se about the NBA Cup. Now, I got to be honest with you. I actually did try to look of like, okay, like what does it mean like for the NBA Cup? Like who's playing for what here? And I lost interest and I gave up after about 30 seconds. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, dude. There's NBA games.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
He also said that the Bears head coaching opening would be the most coveted job after the season.
They'll let that guy stay. I heard today that they were very worried about screwing up Caleb Williams, so that he likes this guy Brown so much that they may let him stay as the head coach. What a disaster that'll turn into.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish along with George Kurtz. It's time to decide whether or not you have to hold a roster spot for some players who are off this week in fantasy. You may have to cut some of these. George and I will run through them. Some decisions I think are easier than others. Let's start off with Houston Texans C.J. Stroud, who we just talked about as one of the bigger disappointments in fantasy this season. Stroud with just 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Texans are off, George. They come back to play the Dolphins.